I grew up in Columbus, Ohio, the second oldest of 5 boys. As a black family in America, religion was just a natural part of our lives. At that age, I assumed everyone not only believed in God, but knew God existed. The idea of an atheist never once entered my mind. As far as I can remember, they were never mentioned in church, never mentioned in the community, never mentioned at all, really. How could someone not believe in God when they knew He existed? Why would someone knowingly condemn themselves to hell? As a kid, I did normal things that kids do. Watch cartoons, play outside with my brothers and my friends, act out my own episodes of Pokemon when no one else wanted to play with me.
Pokeball, go!
However, when Sunday came, that was a time to put away childish things. Sundays were God's time.
When you think on a level up here, you can't hook up with somebody who's eating the trash off the floor. You got to think on that. Oh, y'all don't hear what I'm saying to you. Don't you fool with me. I'll set it off in here. I'll set it off in here. You got to get out the arms of the chickens and spread your wings and fly with the eagles.
I loved hearing the preacher deliver the stories of the Bible. His powerful, booming voice reaching each and every soul in the church. It was as if he was reaching every soul in the entire world, perhaps even reaching God himself. In his book, The Souls of Black Folk, Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois even referred to the preacher as the most unique personality developed by the Negro on American soil. That was an understatement. The stories of the Bible fascinated me to no end. When I learned to read, I remember obsessing over my copy of Beautiful Bible Stories for Children. I think my mom may actually still have that book. To me as a kid, these weren't just stories. They were real events involving real people. Looking back on it, I find it interesting how I viewed the stories of the Bible as historical events, but the stories from the myths of ancient Egypt and ancient Greece, which I loved just as much as I loved the Bible stories, were just that. Myths. As the years went on, things began to change. There came a point where my family's church attendance was less regular. As we moved from place to place, we struggled to settle in one particular church, or even one particular neighborhood. This was the first time I seriously began to wonder why I was a believer. It was the first time I struggled with an onslaught of internal questions that threatened to tear away my faith. In my early teenage years, the God of the Bible was replaced with a more deistic version of a deity. All that nightly prayer I was doing as a kid was replaced with video games and puberty. I wasn't yet willing to make the leap that God didn't exist. I still felt that there was something bigger than myself. I was sure there had to be. Everything happens for a reason, right? I'm not sure what happened, but there came a point where I no longer believed in any deity at all. At least, I don't think I did. I guess the best description would be that I was apathetic towards the existence of a deity. At the time, I remember a high school friend asking me whether or not I believed in God. I said no, surprising myself and unsure if I actually meant what I said. It was the first time I had also used the atheist label to describe myself, but I still didn't entirely understand what that meant. I think I mostly said it to get a reaction out of him so that he wouldn't ask me again, but I remember feeling so ashamed of myself for accepting such a dirty label. Not long after that, my Christian friends decided to invite me to their youth group. I immediately resisted the idea. The thought of being among Christians in the presence of God terrified me. Guilt began to overwhelm me. I felt that God would be disappointed and would just outright abandon me just as I abandoned him. It's always interesting for me to hear atheists say that they feared hell and Satan when they were Christians, but that was the opposite for me. I felt I always knew that God would come out on top in the end, so it wasn't Satan I feared. It was God and his judgment. I also feared losing my friends. That terrified me more than anything. Each time they would come to me, I would say no, even when they tried a different pitch that included things that interested me. After the billionth or so time, I finally agreed to go. That youth group was incredibly fun. There was a sense of community. I was with people who were charismatic and seemed to understand the Bible. They were happy, they were honest, they were caring. They showed me that the fascination and love I had for Christianity as a child was merely scratching the surface. In order to truly enjoy what Christianity had to offer, you had to study the Bible and understand the religious history and context. You had to truly accept that you were a flawed person and that you would only be slightly less flawed if you allowed God into your life. It wasn't easy, but it felt so right at the time. As I got more involved, those deep-rooted questions from my past slowly began to surface in my mind. During our weekly Bible studies, I found myself questioning the various claims made in the Bible, as well as the biblical exegesis asserted by many of the leaders. There were times I even mustered up enough courage to ask some questions out loud, immediately feeling guilty having done so. Oftentimes, my questions were just answered with Bible verses. I can't even tell you how many times I was told that the Bible has all the answers you'll ever need. The Bible only made me question more. If the Bible was 100% true, why was it so hard to provide one definitive outside source to verify its supposed veracity? I still have the Bible I had during that time. Pages, margins, and inside flaps riddled with some of the questions I had during and after various Bible studies. As my senior year of high school was winding down, I found the thought of getting away from religion becoming more prominent in my mind. A heathen siren song, if you will. I remember telling one of the leaders of the youth group about my doubts and just feeling so ashamed. It felt like I was letting my friends and family down. I don't remember what the leader told me, but I do remember him genuinely trying to reassure me. He wanted to keep me in the faith. He offered biblical examples that he felt would show me that questioning was a normal symptom in my spiritual journey. Remember Thomas in the Gospel of John? In the time between graduating high school and starting college, I remember attending a college youth group with my best friend at the time. The topic was something to the effect of good and God being synonymous. During the Bible study, the teacher said that it wasn't possible to be good without God because the Bible, according to her interpretation, says that goodness is intrinsic to God's nature and emanates from Him. This stunned me. After the teaching, I made no comments. I asked no questions. I think my friend and I went to go see Wall-E afterwards. I didn't know it then, but that was the moment I boarded the skepticism train. I was now waving goodbye to my friends and family, goodbye to any semblance of religious groupthink or dogma. During my brief time in college, I still considered myself a Christian, but it was mostly out of convenience. I think it would have been fair to consider myself a cultural Christian. I was doing my best to bury the questions that were consistently threatening my faith, and it wasn't just the questions I had as a teenager. This was a culmination of questions from my childhood as well. I was beginning to wonder why I believed in the first place. How could I justify the sincerity of my belief in a deity I was rapidly moving away from? The final nail in the coffin of my faith was a lecture in my Sociology 101 class. The lecture was about morality. Now, to a normal person, everything I'm about to tell you would be common sense. To someone who was told that everyone believes in some version of a deity and that everyone knows there is an absolute moral standard, this was fucking mind-blowing. The professor told us that different cultures and societies, both past and present, have different moral standards that they accept. Now, notice how I didn't say customs or practices, although those things do factor into moral standards. One action or standard that is acceptable in one society or culture may not be acceptable in another society. Societies change. Standards change. I remember sitting on the edge of my seat listening to this lecture. I was nodding and taking notes, making sure I caught every single word. After the lecture, I remember texting my best friend about it. Obviously, he didn't agree with me that absolute moral standards essentially didn't exist. I understood why. When you have the mindset that everything is in concordance with some deity's nature, whatever the hell that means, it's very difficult to see things differently. On August 24th, 2009, I finally came to the realization that I was an atheist. I'm not gonna lie to you, some anger also came with that realization. A lot of anger. I felt I had been lied to my entire life. This anger was often unjustly aimed at my friends and family, some of which were religious individuals. Some of those friends even decided to no longer associate with me. I remember a composer friend telling me I was being a real asshole when I was constantly making fun of religious people. He was absolutely right. I've changed since then.
Daddy, stop. Daddy's still talking. You failed.
Care.
Well, mostly. So, why don't I believe? I've mostly wasted time in this video telling you the events that led me to atheism. Atheists do that all the time, and it can be incredibly boring. In which case, I do thank you so much for continuing to watch this video. You're awesome. The title of this video is Why I'm an Atheist, not How I Became an Atheist. As I look back on it, the answer was always so obvious, and I hope it was obvious to you as well. It shouldn't have taken a very basic morality lecture in a Sociology 101 class to shake me of my religious beliefs. If any deities truly exist, wouldn't they want me to think for myself and question everything? Shouldn't critical thinking and skepticism trump blind acceptance of tenuous claims declared by any individual or group of individuals? Instead of being given essential knowledge that would help me better understand reality, I'm told to just accept whatever claims fall in line with the unfounded claims of one particular religious or philosophical framework. Fuck that. This is why I'm an atheist. It's not just the absence of any evidence pointing to the existence of any deities. It's more so that there isn't any good reason to believe that they have ever existed, do exist, or will ever exist.